And welcome to Wednesday Night Slides, number 70. Got an oldie to start things off, then some current stuff. Primarily the Santa Train will be the big topic tonight. Let me get the screen share going. And you all should be seeing the opening slide there.
Indeed.
Okay, and as usual, I welcome comments and questions during the program. If you have anything you want to say, feel free to hit your space bar to unmute yourself. And then when you release your space bar, you'll be muted again. We're going to start off tonight going back to a trip I organized back in 1990. I was the trip director for the Wilmington chapter of the National Railway Historical Society. And I got this idea of taking their steam engine, which at the time was a 282 tank engine, and running a mixed train with it. They had a few vintage freight cars. I was going to run the vintage freight cars and a combine behind the steam engine. So here we are at the Green Bank Station, ready to depart on our trip. This is November 1990. We're in Delaware, for those not familiar with the Wilmington and Western. Now, unfortunately, the freight cars I wanted were not available. But at the time, the railroad still had a freight customer down at the interchange with CSX, a brick company. And the brick company had gotten 2 boxcars in. So down they went, and they snagged the 2 modern boxcars to use on the mixed train. So we have our 282 tank engine with a tender, 2 modern boxcars, a flat car, and the combine. So not exactly an authentic train, but not quite what I had envisioned, but away we went. Wilmington Western is amazingly scenic. It parallels Red Clay Creek and crosses the creek numerous times. So there's a lot of bridges. Now, back then, all the bridges were these timber bridges. They have since been replaced, most of them, because they had back-to-back 500-year floods go through and take out a lot of the railroad. This is at the Wooddale Cut. It's hard to believe some of these shots here. You're pretty much in suburbia. Somehow the railroad is nestled down in the valley here. There's plenty of houses up on the hills, but down in the valley here, it's pretty quiet and pretty bucolic. So this was the first time any freight cars of this size ever went up the branch. This is an old Baltimore and Ohio branch. I went to Landenberg, Pennsylvania at one time, but I hadn't seen freight up this far in probably 20 years when this was taken. So we did some pretty good run-bys. Here we are at Barley Mill Road. And the spillway at Sharpless Road, which is no longer there now. The spillway has been removed just in the last couple of years. The signal back there is actually a flashing signal that lets the train crew know that the crossing lights are working. This is at Ashland. It's the only truss bridge on the railroad. And at Ashland, there was an overhead bridge there at one time. And no freight cars of this size have been up here before. So once we got done with this run by here at the bridge, we crawled underneath this overhead bridge because no one was really sure if the tall box cars were going to clear or not. They did clear. This is at NVF, National Vulcanized Fibers in York.
Okay, that's it. What did you do?
Somebody's got their computer unmuted, and we can hear you. I'm not sure who it is.
Maybe unmute and then remute everyone, Steve.
I tried that and it didn't seem to work. I'll try it again. Stand by. Mute all. Mute all. Okay, and According to my screen here, everybody's muted. Okay, and back. Continuing on, NVF moved out of the plant, gosh, 20, 30 years ago. And this was slated for preservation. They were going to repurpose the factory here. Unfortunately, about 5 years ago, fire went through here and gutted the entire thing. All that's left are the walls now. I'm not sure what the future of what's left is at this point. There isn't much left. And I'm not sure the walls are going to stand up on their own without a roof keeping them somewhat stable. Hockessin Hills between York Lynn and the town of Hockessin, the end of the line now. Pretty stiff grade going up through here. And arrival at the end of the line in Hockessin. So that was just something I came across while I was going through some scans over the last few days. I had me go back and revisit this trip. I hadn't shown these ever before. And it wasn't a great day, the cloudy weather, shooting on Kodachrome 200, which is a bear to scan. It has like grain the size of golf balls, but when you use some denoise on it, it does help to remove some of the grain. All right, on to Santa Claus. We're going to head down onto the Clinchfield Railroad. CSX has it now between Shelby, Kentucky and Kingsport, Tennessee for the annual Santa Train. And this year, the Santa Train featured CSX's Clinchfield Heritage Unit, fresh out of the shop. Me and Mike Burkhart went down on Thursday, and there was an event in Irwin, Tennessee, which is down below Kingsport, on Thursday night. And we actually got down there in time to catch the last part of the festivities in Kingsport. Wasn't long after we got there, though, they started moving things around to leave Kingsport to go back, or leave Irwin to go back up to Kingsport for the next day's ferry move up to Shelby, where they would stage the train for its southbound run on Saturday. This is on Thursday night. We have the Clinchfield Heritage Unit up front. We have 3 of CSX's executive F40s behind it. A little bit of snow coming down. And then we got a lot of snow coming down. That's the old Clinchfield Station in Irwin there. They ran around the train, and now the F40s are leading, going back up to Kingsport. And they actually had some box cars done up like CPKC, Canadian Pacific, does their box cars for the Holiday Express. It looked pretty good. So Friday, nothing was happening until Friday evening. The train was in Kingsport being loaded with all the gifts, 15 tons of gifts that we're going to give out on Saturday. So it was sitting up in Kingsport on Friday. So me and Mike headed over to Johnson City, Tennessee to check out the East Tennessee Railroad. The East Tennessee Railroad, as you can see here, is a Genesee, Wyoming operation. The switcher came from sister railroad Quebec-Gatineau up in Canada. It's snowing again. This railroad runs on the remnant of the narrow gauge East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, the old Tweetsie. And in fact, the Tweetsie Trail ends right here at the yard. Then there's a spur that's not on the right of way that continues from the yard on into downtown Johnson City. From there, we hung out in Johnson City along Norfolk Southern for a while. A little bit of snow up on the mountains there, catching some Norfolk Southern action. Got this neat row of old brick buildings along the tracks. Tennessee Hills has a distillery next town over in Jonesboro. There's also a brew pub just to my immediate left here where I'm standing. Southbound or westbound train going through Johnson City. and same direction. Went up to Kingsport, checked out the train being loaded there briefly, just to make sure it was still there. On the way out of town, went past Pal's Sudden Service. Pal's is a regional fast food chain in that part of Virginia and Tennessee. And this is the original Pal's, and it had this cool neon sign over top of it. Then heading out of town, we went past a second Pal's, and this Pal's had a Muffler Man on top of it, holding a Pal's hamburger. The Muffler Man is dressed in the official Pal's uniform, the blue shirt, the red tie. Another Muffler Man got added to the collection. We went up to Dant, Virginia, one of the classic spots on the Clinchfield, the home of the Union Baptist Church that is right up against the tracks, to catch the northbound ferry move, which would have the executive F40s leading. Here's a test shot that I took just before the train got to the church. You can see the train's headlights down the tracks there in the distance, snow coming down. I kind of like the test shot. It's kind of turned out interesting. But then the primary shot was, of course, this one here of the F's going by the church. So it gets up into Shelby, Kentucky. We headed for Pikeville, Kentucky, where the motels are. Its first gift stop the next morning is actually at the Shelby Yard at like 6 in the morning. So at 5:30, we were up and out of Pikeville, and we drove down to Elkhorn City. Our usual starting point is to set up for a night photo as the train comes into Elkhorn City. So here comes the train. The sky's getting bright. The sun's not quite up yet. This is a little before 7. Moving slow enough, I get 2 frames off. Flash is recycled just fine. That Clinchfield unit looking mighty nice in the front. This is coming out of the gift stop at Elkhorn City. This is the Colco, which is Collco, Colco Tipple, just beyond the town of Hayside, Virginia. I had never been back here before. I had seen shots taken here. So I wanted to get this shot because I had never done this. I couldn't figure out how to do it because the road is on the other side of the river. And I'm like, how do you get to it? And someone said, well, you walk through the tube. I'm like, really? Yeah. Well, so me and everybody that was with me, we stomped through the tube. Wasn't the steps on the other side on the highway side are almost gone. It was a little tricky getting down the steps. Then walk through this really dark tube and come out in the loader there, down the steps in the loader and come out here. And I thought, there'd be a handful of us back in here. By the time the train showed up, there was about 60 people back here getting this shot. It was pretty incredible. The coal tipple just kept spitting people out. It was incredible. Its next stop was in Clinchco, and this is after the Clinchco gift stop coming out of town. We were concentrating on shots that were wider, not nose on, so tunnels around and things like that. We needed to get wide so you could see the Clinchfield lettering on the side of the lead unit there. One shot that I've done almost every year. I've done the Santa Train. You can see here, I've done it 8 times now, actually. And one shot that I always get, there's 2 shots I always get. They're traditional. One is passing the Union Baptist Church in Dant. I thought it'd be kind of neat to go back over the years and see what else I shot here. So let's go back to 2010. Here's a 2010 train going by. Back in 2010, they were using standard cab locomotives on the front because they felt that it gave the engineers better visibility with all the crowds along the tracks. So that was a 2010 train. In 2014, they used a SpongeBob unit, SpongeBob square cab. For obvious reasons, it's called that. We went back again the very next year, 2015. This was the year that CSX embargoed the entire Clinchfield. And everybody was afraid that Clinchfield was in imminent danger of abandonment, the entire line. And that this Santa train might be one of the last trains ever on the Clinchfield. Fortunately, that did not come to pass, but that was the one time I went back down in back-to-back years, 2014 and 2015. 2017 was the year. That was the 75th running of the Santa train, and they did it right. They got the Clinchfield number 800 out of a museum. They took a ex-Seaboard coastline SD45 and lettered it Clinchfield because Seaboard had sold Clinchfield those units in the past. Really, really, really cool. This was 2017. Then 2019, when they used the F unit in 2017, they figured that, okay, visibility wasn't as big a factor. So for 2019, the executive F40s led the train. And in 2019, they were painted in CSX colors. But then 2020 and 2021, there was no Santa train because of the pandemic. 2022 had the F40s back on it again. But by this time, they'd been painted in Baltimore and Ohio colors. All right. Out of Dan. Oh, this is the engineer of the train. I should have gotten his name. Written his name down. Forgot to. This is the engineer of the train that day. This past trip. And this was his last day. He was retiring after running the Santa train. We got down to the south end of Boody, Boody, Boody siding near St. Paul, Virginia. And this couple came walking down the dirt road. And from back where the back of the train is. And I could hear, nobody said anything, but I could hear the rest of the photo line thinking, these people better get out of the way before the train gets here. But I'm thinking, no. I want them to actually get down into the scene here. So the train showed up and they tried to get back into behind the trees. It's a pretty steep drop off here. And I'm like, no. Stand out there and wave to the train when it goes by. So they actually hit about the perfect spot where I want them to be for the shot. So this kind of worked out. This is Osborne's Curve near Dungannon, Virginia. A spot I've been to many times before, but not every year. I sometimes skip this shot. And this is the stop in Fort Blackmore, Virginia. You can see the crowd getting ready to go to the back of the train as soon as the train comes to a stop to see Santa Claus. This is actually one of the smaller crowds the train will encounter over the course of the day. It makes 14 different stops. Coming out of Fort Blackmore, it's a nice big sweeping curve. And then the other big highlight on the Clinchfield is Copper Creek Viaduct, Copper Creek Trestle. And I've done this Copper Creek every year, 7 times with diesel. Now I've actually done the Santa train 8 times. My first time there was in 1992. I didn't go back again until 2010. But back in 1992, I did do Copper Creek Trestle with the Santa train, and that was the year it was pulled by the Union Pacific Challenger, number 3985, disguised as Clinchfield 676. And I actually parked at the bottom and climbed up the hill to get the shot here. The sky was just gray, and the engine was not going to show well against the sky. So I actually made the climb up the hill to get up to track level to get these shots here. So once again, back through the years, this is 1992. Here's the 2010 version crossing Copper Creek. And 2014. There's a highway pool over here, but it fills up on Santa Train Day. And unfortunately, it's not being maintained very well, and there's growth popping up, beginning to cut down on the view. For 2015, I didn't like the sky too much. I went up and set up on the old Southern, which runs beneath it, and got this shot here. Um, the engineer on the last run was Scott Steffi. Thanks to Billy Bob for providing that information. 2017, back on the Southern again, looking up at the Clinchfield F unit up high. For 2019, I actually had permission to drive up to the top from the property owner and got the 2019 train from track level. 2022, we had nice blue skies, no problem shooting down below with the B&O inspired F-40s leading. And then this past year, last month. Now, someone pointed out to me after the fact that it still says Clinchfield Railroad under the span, or on the span that the engine is on right now on that shot here. So I went in and did some cropping and some sharpening and things like that, and did this quasi close-up. You can see where it says Clinchfield Railroad underneath the lead truck there of the locomotive. From Copper Creek, we went down to Waycross, Tennessee, which is just across the state line from Virginia, practically on the state line. At least once per trip, I try to get to the back of the train where Santa Claus is and enjoy all the fun back there and watch the kids getting their gifts. So here's Santa on the back of the observation car, ready to start throwing gifts off. And here's a kid who caught a duck. Like I said, Santa and his helpers unloaded 15 tons of gifts on this day.
So pigs can fly.
Pigs can fly, yes. And CSX has a ground crew that goes out too. They make sure that everybody gets a gift at every stop. No one goes away empty-handed. There's that pig again. Was caught by a little girl. Another duck flying in the upper left corner there. Really neat to see. Like I said, at least once per trip, I try to get to the back of the train here and watch the gifts being given out, because that's where the real magic of the Santa train is. The train got down to Kingsport. The Clinchfield unit, Heritage unit, was actually left in Kingsport so it could work on the old Clinchfield. A nice touch by CSX. This whole area from Kingsport South down to Irwin and down below, they're still recovering from Hurricane Helene. Irwin was where that factory was, where the workers couldn't get out of work and drowned, and where the hospital was, had the people up on the roof that were trapped. And then below there, the Nolichucky Gorge was just decimated. Just as a little nice touch, CSX left the Clinchfield unit in Kingsport to work on the old Clinchfield. From there, we headed for home. We drove from Kingsport up to Roanoke that night. And the next morning, we started off in Roanoke by watching Amtrak actually back out. It's backing up here. They have a storage spot in Roanoke where they keep their trains when they're between trips. it's backing out to go downtown to the station to go out. And then not long afterwards, here's the Amtrak train leaving Roanoke, heading for Washington, D.C. and beyond. We did most of our shooting on this day down here by the old Norfolk and Western shop buildings. Here we have a southbound train coming in. We had a pretty busy morning here. Northbound NS train. The shop building on the right, that's where Norfolk Southern built their steam locomotives. They were the last big builder of U.S. steam. And locomotives like the 611 were built right there at that shop. The tall, pointy building behind the locomotive, that belongs to Wachovia Bank. There's some interesting angles down here by the shops. And somehow they ran 611 for what, 2 or 3 years down here. And for some reason, I never went back here and got it going past its birthplace. It was just a big oversight on my part. I need them to restore 611 again just so I can get this one shot. This train had a high wide load right behind the locomotives. And then the afternoon train, Amtrak train came down. Here it is going by the shops. It would go into the station, unload. Then it comes back out of the station again, went past us up to the next set of signals you see beyond the footbridge. Waited for the signals to turn in its favor. Then came back down past us again to take the other leg of the Y to go down to its storage area. So here it is diverting to go back to its layover home. Local train came out, just 3 cars. This train here had the Lackawanna Heritage Unit running as a mid-train distributed power unit, DPU. And getting towards sunset here. And then the evening Amtrak train came out heading for DC. After this, we packed up and drove north to Stanton, Virginia. Staunton. Looks like Staunton, but it's pronounced Stanton. Our goal this day was to chase the Shenandoah Valley, which is running this really neat GP9 in Baltimore and Ohio inspired, or actually Chesapeake and Ohio inspired paint. We had stopped in at the Shenandoah Valley on Thursday on the way down, and we were told that they would probably get underway on Monday, sometime around 8 or 8:30. We got there at 8 and they were already out, but we found them next town up in Verona. And the chase was on. This is at Fort Defiance, Virginia. And Weir's Cave, Virginia. And then, this is above Weir's Cave, approaching where they have their interchange with Norfolk Southern. And this is at the interchange. They dropped a couple of cars off, picked a couple of cars up, headed back south again to Stanton. That's the interchange in the background there. We had set up for this shot here. The tracks are over on the left-hand side, left center behind that tree. And there were cows grazing out in the field. And we thought they'd be a nice little prop. So we set up, and the cows all got curious and came over to see what we were up to. So they kind of stood there staring at us. And there's our train coming back from heading back towards Stanton. The other cows in the background there, they're on their way to see what's going on. They're curious too. And same location, just down the street. You will notice in the background a brand new Buc-ee's is on the rise back there. And back at Weir's Cave. And back at Fort Defiance. Coming down through Verona. And then on the way out of Stanton, we found this other Muffler Man. He's a Muffler Man cousin of sorts. He's brand new. He was built in 2023. There are still companies out there making fiberglass roadside giants. And this one here is selling furniture. Our last stop on the trip was in Winchester, Virginia. The feed mill there has this, looks like it's an unused switcher. It's got Lowe's buckets up on the stacks, capping the stacks there. And you can see the clouds are rolling in here. We're still in sun here for this shot here, but the clouds are rolling in. So it's time to hit the road and get home. So that brought an end to our Santa Train trip. A few more shots here that have been taken since then. Woodstown Central, my new hometown steam railroad, runs 20 minutes from here. They were running their Christmas trains. So I was out for this particular trip here. This was the last time they ran the engine pointing south. So I wanted to get out and shoot that. Here we see it coming down between Swedesboro and Woodstown, New Jersey, under something that's halfway between fall foliage and dead leaves. Same location, different lens. And going by probably the most famous photo prop on the railroad, this house here. The owner of this house loves the railroad. He is so glad to have it in his front yard. He just loves it. If they hadn't turned the engine around, so it's facing north, I was going to knock on his door and ask if I could do a night photo here one night. But with the engine pointing north, the shot does not work anymore. And crossing Memorial Lake in Woodstown, heading south. A couple days later, they ran the locomotive down to Mannington, which is about 8 miles from their South Woodstown base. There's a Y down there. They wanted to Y the engine so it was pointing north to better position it for the Santa Claus trains. So they ran a caboose hop, and they advertised 16 tickets, $50 a piece, on Thursday for a Friday trip, and sold out. So here's the caboose hop going through Alloway Junction, which is no longer a junction, which the branch to Alloway is long gone. And crossing the causeway at Mannington. And taking the Y to be turned. Coming up the other leg of the Y. Now it's pointing north. And I did this one shot coming out of the sun of the northbound trip. They had to bring the Baldwin diesel behind the steam engine there back because they needed it for a second train the following day on Saturday. The next day, I went out to get this shot here of the steam train going north across the Oldman's Creek Bridge. Unfortunately, it did not run the first 2 trips that day. It had developed a sticking glad hand on a air compressor lube line, and they needed to fix that. So it missed the first 2 trips on this day. So I wound up just settling for the former Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines GP38 running on its old home rails, crossing over Oldman's Creek. Steam engine was back though by Sunday, and I went out and set up my strobes and lit it crossing Memorial Lake on Sunday night. And then most recently I headed out to East Broadtop. They were running Christmas in coal country trips with 3 trips an evening. And since the East Broadtop Ys their trains at each end of the line, that would be 3 trips, would be 6 opportunities to get shots. I stopped at Cove, Pennsylvania on the way out and shot a few trains there. Cove is just above Harrisburg on the old Pennsylvania Railroad main line. Got to East Broadtop and knew the sun wouldn't be quite dark for the first northbound trip. So I plan on doing a silhouette on the fill at Runk Road above Orbisonia, almost to Shirleysburg. I like my silhouettes with nothing behind them except for sky. So I got real tight to the railroad and shot up. So I wanted to make sure I got light coming underneath the locomotive and maximize the silhouetteness of the train. He went up into Colgate Grove, hit the Y, came back down again. By then it was getting dark. Had the strobe set up. Almost the same location. The silhouette was from the other side of the bridge. Got a full moon rise in here in this shot here. So that was
shot, Steve.
Thanks. So that was the first trip. Second trip I set up at McMullen Summit. This is kind of tricky. The house is privately owned up there. Nobody's in it, but it's got security cameras everywhere, and the owner does not like anybody around. So the railroad told me that, I better stick to this side of the tracks. So it's not quite the lighting I wanted to get, but it turned out okay. That's the famous overhead bridge, which is no longer used. About 3 coaches back there going over to the house. The bridge is no longer in service, which is why they built this driveway here, which opened up another nice set of photo possibilities. For the return trip, I went to Enyart Road and set up. I had this shot here planned. Glinny shot, train would be coming from left to right. A Glinny shot with a train going by the railroad crossing sign here. Unfortunately, as the train got close to me, this huge truck came up and parked up at the grade crossing, which is just out of the frame on the left-hand side. Huge truck. If I fired the flash, all it was going to do was hit the guy right in the face. And none of the flash would reach the tracks because the truck was in the way. So this attempt here, I just watched the train go by. Couldn't do anything else with it. The third trip, I went back up to Runk Road and did this shot here across the field from the highway. The shot I wanted would have had the locomotive a little bit further to the right in the frame, but unfortunately the flashes really kicked back off the train. So my next shot with the locomotive a little bit better positioned has the tender completely blown out by glare. And then the shot after that has the first coach completely blown out by glare. So I thought, well, if I was going to glint, it might as well glint off the side rods here. So I settled for this shot here. I kept this kind of strange crop because I wanted to include the bridge, and I wanted to get that house up on the hill on the right-hand side. I'm still not quite happy with this. I still need to do some work adjusting the sky a little bit. That's the effort. Then I packed up. Train turns around pretty fast. While the train's out on the line, you get one shot. You have only about 30 minutes to pack up, relocate, unpack, and reset for the next shot. I went down to Orbisonia except for this shot here, just north of the station. Unfortunately, I didn't notice in the dark those branches hanging down. That kind of got in the way of the cab, but it's an okay shot. And then this is just the light that was available, the train coming back into the station to unload. And on the back is an East Broad Top Herald, all in lights. That's going to wrap things up for tonight. The next program is going to be January 29th, late in the month, but that keeps it out of the way of my magazine deadlines. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I'll see you trackside or back here after Christmas. And I'm going to sign off for the YouTubers here.